Hello and welcome back to Minecraft Minuet. Um, I figured today we'd start at the zombie spawner. I do need some levels. I did not lose all of my levels from dying, thankfully, but I did use them all up in enchanting our fancy new diamond armor. If you want to take a look here, you can see that we have protection and unbreaking aqua infinity on our helmet, only protection on our chest plate, protection and unbreaking on our leggings, and then some fire protection, unbreaking 3, and feather falling 4 on our diamond boots. Here we have a mending book, a chest plate, and another helmet. I'm going to try to get a little bit better chest plate to kind of combine with this one, or just get a new one that's a little bit better. And then I do want to put mending on everything. So as we get more mending books, we'll be able to do that, and that's kind of what all the sugarcane is for. Our swords are looking pretty good. We have Unbreaking 3, Looting, Sharpness, and Sweeping Edge. I'm not super happy about Sweeping Edge, but beggars can't be choosers. I will be getting Looting upgraded on this so that it's a little bit better at least. We got our Diamond Axe, Unbreaking 3, Silk Touch Efficiency 3, and Mending. And then we have a Unbreaking 3, Fortune 2, Efficiency 3, Mending pickaxe. And then our shovel, we haven't put anything on. I do want to upgrade our bow too eventually, so we have quite a bit of stuff to do as far as upgrading our equipment goes. So we will need quite a few levels. I did miss a week of filming because I got sick, and yeah, it really sucks. I wound up getting COVID-19, and I've been very ill for close to a week and a half now. And today is really the first day that I've felt like I had the energy to do anything. And that's kind of why this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. It's probably only going to be around 30 minutes. So I'm definitely not going to be spending a whole lot of time, doing stuff today. But I did want to get on here and, continue making videos because it is something that I enjoy. But also I think this opens up for a really good opportunity to talk about something that seems to be very confusing to the average person. Or maybe just a little muddled because there's too much going on right now. And that is vaccines. How do vaccines work? What do they do and don't do? What are the types of COVID vaccines? What are the risks of taking a vaccine or getting a vaccine? And those kinds of things. I'm not going to be advocating for a vaccine today. I don't think that I am someone who can advocate that you get a vaccine. I'm just here to provide a little bit of information and hopefully some clarity on vaccines so that if you were on the fence about it, or if you're firmly against it or firmly for it, you have that little bit of extra information to either solidify your decision or change your decision completely. That's not for me to say. But I definitely think that vaccines are one of those things that can be a little bit confusing. And I think that part of it is because there's a bunch of different types of vaccines. So that can cause a little bit of confusion. There's also different ways that they work. So different risk factors come about because of the different ways the vaccines work. And people are often confused as to why vaccines don't provide them with 100% immunity to things. I feel like, and I could be wrong, that a lot of people believe that vaccines make it so that you cannot get a disease or a virus or anything like that. And that's not true. That's not the case. It never really has been the case. Even when we go all the way back to the smallpox vaccine, the history of vaccinations basically started with smallpox, and scientists realized that people who had gotten a similar disease called cowpox didn't get as sick when they were subjected to smallpox. And back then, smallpox was a really big deal. It would kill a lot of people or leave them horribly disfigured from scars and things that they got from having it, even if they survived it. But the survival rate was not very good. So this scientist took the cowpox vaccine, or the cowpox virus, and introduced it to a bunch of people. Not very ethical for the time, but it was a different time. And those people he then introduced smallpox to. And those people had less infection rates, and the infections weren't as severe as people who did not get exposed to cowpox. And he recognized this. Apparently, the story goes that he noticed that milkmaids who were exposed to more cattle and got cowpox on a more regular basis didn't have as much scarring or incidents of death with smallpox as people that didn't work with cattle and weren't in close contact with cattle all the time. So that's kind of the basis for vaccination. And it's exposure to a germ or part of a germ. And nowadays it can even be something like mRNA or DNA that allows the body to have a reaction to that germ. And we're just going to call it a germ because you can get vaccinations for all kinds of things. Bacteria, virus, fungus, any of that stuff, you can get a vaccine for it. They even have rattlesnake vaccines, believe it or not, for dogs. So you can definitely get a vaccine for a bunch of different things. So we're going to generically call the thing you're getting vaccinated against a germ. Because it's very easy to generalize in that way, and it'll make this whole thing a lot simpler, and that's kind of the point. But anyways, a vaccine allows your body to react to the germ or part of the germ or a substitute for the germ to build up what are called B cells, memory B cells. And those memory B cells are used by the body in later in other infections to kind of allow the body to respond quicker and easier to the infection and get rid of it quicker and easier so that you don't have a bunch of damage happening because of the virus or germ, and your body can get over the infection faster. Notice how I never said that you were going to not get an infection. That's not what vaccines do. And so far, we don't have very much going for us here that allow you to completely skip out on an infection. Let me see here. I kind of like respiration 1. Okay, let's see. What do we have on here now? Protection 3. We already have protection 3. Let's see what the chest plate gives us. Thorns 2. I don't really like anything that the table is giving us today. So we're going to go swing at some more zombies real quick and see if we can enchant one more book. But the other thing is that vaccines, they may not stop you from getting a virus or a germ. I keep saying virus, but I mean to say germ. They can't stop you from getting a germ. You're still going to be able to pick it up from the environment, from other people, wherever the vectors of that germ are. And vectors are just ways of getting germs. Whatever your vectors for getting that germ is still going to be out there. There's still going to be people around you that are possibly infected. If it lives on surfaces or anything like that, you're going to be able to get the germ that way. So the vaccine isn't going to protect you from those things, but it can take a germ that would otherwise be deadly and make it not so deadly. First of all, it lowers the rate of infection. And what does that mean? So basically, when I say it lowers the rate of infection, sometimes even though your body is exposed to a germ, it may not result in a full-blown infection because your body may be able to shut down that infection before anything even occurs. The less of the germ you're exposed to and the amount of immunity that your body already has allows your body to shut down that infection really quickly. So if you were exposed to, let's say, one germ, which is highly unlikely, but if you were to be exposed to one germ and your body had already seen that germ before, most likely it's going to be able to kill that germ pretty easily. And a lot of times germs die in the body without there being immunity, just because the body is not necessarily the perfect place for that germ to be, or the body has a bunch of different mechanisms set up to kill germs so that you're not constantly getting sick. So that germ's probably not going to survive, and therefore that germ's not going to lead to an infection. Yay you. You didn't get an infection. Because of a higher state of immunity from a vaccine, that number of people who do get an infection goes down, which is great. Less people that have an infection, the less likely they're going to spread it to other people, and therefore less infection overall. And that over time, the more people that have heightened immunity and the less people that get the infection, the instance of infection in a population over time will reduce, as long as a certain number of that population is getting a vaccine. And that vaccine works properly, which is great. That makes vaccines incredibly valuable to people who don't want to get sick. But it also is incredibly valuable to people who can't get the vaccine. These are people that have lowered immune systems because of disease or because of genetics. People who can't get the vaccine because they're, unable to. Nowadays with the COVID vaccine, it's free, but sometimes people can't afford healthcare, so they're not going to be able to receive a vaccine. These people are more susceptible to the disease just because they don't have the access to a vaccine. But because other people have gotten a vaccine, there is a chance that there's something called herd immunity, which is where enough people in the population have gotten a vaccine to where the point that there is such a low amount of the circulating bug or germ that it's very unlikely for people to catch it anyways. You're going to be less likely to be exposed to the germ and therefore less likely to get it because a lot of people have gotten the vaccine and the instance of infection is very low. The other thing that vaccines do is that they lower the severity of an infection. So let's say that you got however many vaccines you needed to be considered vaccinated for the virus or germ that you needed to get vaccinated for, or you felt that you wanted to get vaccinated for. You got all your vaccines, you're considered fully vaccinated. But you, unfortunately, still got the germ. And you wound up getting an infection with the germ, meaning that there was enough of it in your body that your body mounted a full immuno response, and now your body is fighting the germ. What the vaccine does is that when your body is exposed to a germ and it makes those B antibodies or memory B cells, your body then stores a portion of those B cells for an occasion where you get infected with the germ again. And those B cells, when activated and with the help of killer T cells, sweep through the body and get rid of the germ. And they do it very quickly and efficiently because they've made antibodies, which are basically little pieces of proteins that recognize parts of the virus that are unique to that virus or germ, and they can essentially hone in and target on those things and destroy them before they can proliferate in the body and make the infection worse. So if you have antibodies on board, you're much more likely to clear an infection really quickly and be less sick for less amount of time, therefore exposing less people to the virus or to the germ. So those are kind of the two things that vaccines do. And they are very good things. They're very helpful to people as far as reducing the incidences of disease. Diseases like polio, smallpox, chickenpox, measles, all of those things have been proven over time to become less significant in the community and less significant in the population due to vaccination, meaning that people, because they've been getting the vaccine over years and years and years, have lowered the incidence of those diseases to where they're much less prevalent in the population as a whole. I never once got measles. I didn't get chickenpox. I didn't get smallpox as a kid. I was exposed to all of those things from other people, but I just didn't get them because I had been vaccinated, which is great. I didn't need to have those things. I didn't need to have chickenpox so that I got shingles later, and I didn't need to have smallpox so I had scars or ear infections and lost hearing or any of that stuff. I didn't need any of that stuff. And most people don't need any of that stuff. And if I get exposed to it again in the future, I'm not going to have a problem with it. A lot of those things, once you get past a certain age, your body's own immunity takes care of them. And it's very hard for you to get to those diseases anyways, but that's not the point. The point is that I got the vaccines as a kid. I never had to deal with those diseases. I never got sick, and no one around me got sick either. I have 3 brothers and sisters, and none of us ever had any of those diseases, which is good. It's great. Means that our parents didn't have the financial burden of taking care of us. We didn't miss school. We didn't have to deal with any of the possible side effects from those things. It was perfect. If I could go back and elect for them, I would. So, in that case, vaccines are very good. I think, again, what most people don't realize is that just because you get a vaccine doesn't mean you can't get the germ. So that's one thing that I wanted to clear up. So how do vaccines work in the body? There's a bunch of different types of vaccine, but for simplicity's sake, and I will go through all of them, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to go with an example of what's called a live virus vaccine or an attenuated virus vaccine. Or attenuated vaccine. This is a vaccine that's been created with the germ in it. The germ has been modified so that it's less potent, meaning that even though you're going to get an infection you possibly could get an infection from it, it's not going to be as detrimental to you as if you got the wild variant of the germ. So when you get a vaccination like this, your body goes through a process of recognizing the germ, and then it sends different antibodies or different immune cells or white blood cells to attack the germ, which is causing your body to be sick. During this time, you can have a fever or whatever other symptoms are related to that sickness. And that's when you get the actual germ. When you get a vaccine, your body is still going to have a reaction to the vaccine. It's the same reaction or a very similar reaction that your body would have to getting the actual virus. The body sends out the immune cells, and the immune cells react to try to minimize the amount of vaccine that is there. So the first cell that kind of gets to the area is something called a macrophage. And a macrophage is a type of white blood cell that engulfs the virus or the parts of the vaccine that have been injected into you, and it destroys them. In the process of destroying them, it kind of leaves out or voids portions of the germ called antigens. And antigens are the specific part of a germ that can be recognized by the body and that makes you sick. And each germ has its own specific type of antigen, or one that is just slightly different than other ones. While your body's doing its whole reaction thing, we're going to stop doing this because it's kind of boring. We're gonna go, I guess, try to get some more mending books. But while your body is sending out the macrophages and they're eating the viruses and letting out the antigens, another type of body cell called a B cell is reacting to those antigens and forming antibodies. And antibodies are markers that can attach to the germ and allow it to be destroyed much easier by other immune cells, including macrophages. So, and then it can also attach to cells that have been infected by the germ, and those cells can be killed by killer T cells. So B cells and T cells are kind of the cells of long-term immunity, and they're triggered by vaccines and exposure to different viruses and things like that. I don't have any books. Okay, we're gonna have to go get some books. I guess we'll harvest a bunch of stuff too and take it all with us. Okay, so then the next step in what happens in your body is that your body clears the infection or stops reacting to whatever it was reacting to. In the case of, a vaccine, the body's just done reacting to the amount of product that was put into your body with the vaccine. In the case of, an actual infection, the body has kind of cleared the infection. After your body has cleared the infection, some of those B cells are converted into what's called a memory B cell. And this is what really provides you with your long-term immunity. Once your body has produced those cells, the next time you get an infection, this is where those kind of kick in and provide you with a quicker return to normal if you do get an infection. So that's kind of how all the vaccines work. They cause a reaction in the body reacts, and it makes these memory B cells, which then stay in the body, hopefully for a really long time, and provide the body with a quick and easy means of getting rid of an infection in the future. What was that noise? Maybe nothing. Oh, I do need to, now that we're not doing the mob spawner, I do need to turn up hostile creatures again, because I do want to be able to hear them. Okay. I don't need to get snuck up on. But yeah, that's basically how they all work. Now, I kind of want to go through, like, what type of vaccines there are, because I think that's another area where people get a little bit confused as far as, what's going into their body, how is it affecting their body, what are the side effects, why do you need 2 or more vaccines, am I going to get the disease from the vaccine or the germ from the vaccine? And these are all like valid questions. They're really important questions and they're good things to know. And I think just knowing what type of vaccine you're getting and knowing what you're dealing with is going to make it a lot easier for those fears to be either waylaid or for you to make a decision based off the information that you know. So the first type of vaccine, and probably the oldest type of vaccine, is a live vaccine, or the kind of the attenuated vaccine, where you take the actual germ and you do something to make it less virulent, or you take a similar germ that's very, very similar and you inject that into the body. These types of vaccines work really well because the body is actually exposed to the germ and can mount a really similar response to if you were to get the germ from the wild side, but it's going to be a lot easier on the body because the germ has been modified to be less virulent or less, I guess if it was a deadly virus, something that's less deadly, and less likely to cause a bunch of problems for you. These tend to have a lot of long-term immunity, meaning that the antibodies they hang around for a really long time, or the B cells hang around for a really long time, so they're a lot easier to, you get 1 or 2 shots and then you're good for a really long time, which is great. The next type of vaccine, these do usually require a booster, though some of them don't. The most common kind of example of this type of vaccine is the smallpox and chickenpox vaccines, and almost everyone, at least in the United States, receives those vaccines when they're a child, and then they don't need to receive any more of those vaccines for the rest of their life. Like I said, chickenpox and smallpox, almost eradicated in the United States, at least smallpox is, and therefore it's not very common that you're going to come across it, but chickenpox, after a certain age, your body provides enough immunity on its own that you don't need to continue getting boosters. But if either one of those were more prevalent or you were able to get them as an adult, you may need to get boosters of those even later. But as it stands right now, you get 1, 2, or 3 boosters when you're a kid, and then you don't have to get them anymore, which is great. The next type of vaccine, there is some risk associated with a live attenuated vaccine, and it's not used for every type of, virus or anything like that, because you are getting infected with the actual germ, even though it's a modified form of the germ. So it's not always the best option. It's also not the best option for someone who's immunocompromised. So it definitely has its place with certain types of germs, but it's not always going to be the best bet for taking care of or building immunity to certain types of germs. The next type of vaccine is something called an inactivated or dead vaccine. And this is where the germ has been inactivated or killed prior to being put into the vaccine. The good thing about this vaccine is that it does allow for, especially viruses, I assume, that are more likely to cause problems and cause really bad infections that last for a lifetime, to still have a vaccine. A really good example of a killed vaccine is the rabies vaccine that we give to our pets. So a rabies vaccination is required yearly by pets. We talked about that in our pets episode. And it is a killed virus vaccine, meaning that even though it has rabies in it, the rabies is not able to infect the pet and can't cause any problems that way, but it does allow the body to, fight off that infection later if it does come in contact with it, which is great. It greatly reduces the incidences of rabies in the population. Places that have seen consistent rabies vaccinations, like over in Europe, especially in England, they almost never see a case of rabies ever. Whereas in the United States, we still see sporadic cases of rabies because it's in the wild population for sure, but also people tend to not really understand the importance of vaccinations in their pets, especially in hunting dogs and things like that. And their pets can wind up getting rabies and it can spread that way. But it is in the wild population either way. So I'm not going to blame it all on pet owners, but some pet owners can be a problem. But the way that virus works is that the body still can recognize kind of the shape and, signatures of that virus or germ, and can still react to it if it sees it in the future again. The kind of drawbacks to this vaccine is that sometimes the body's a little bit more reactive as far as a vaccine reaction. You know, pain at the injection site, redness and swelling, and things like that, because for the body to start building a reaction, there has to be some activators included in the material of the vaccine to get the body reacting to whatever it is you need it to react to, the germ that you need it to react to. Because the germ is dead, it's not proliferating, it's not going around the body and causing problems or sickness. So there needs to be something included in the vaccine that, you know, riles the body up a little bit. You know, sometimes this is just a little bit of an irritant, like a skin irritant or a tissue irritant that's added into the vaccine that allows your body to react to it a little bit easier. Usually these things aren't, the things that they add aren't dangerous to the body in any way. They are only there to help the body react to the virus. So they're just additives. But because they need to cause a reaction and they are an irritant to the body, sometimes people can have anaphylaxis reactions or things like that. But you could have that to any vaccine with any ingredients. It just depends on your body. The next type of vaccine, these provide pretty good immunity, but they do tend to need boosters over time. More so than the live attenuated vaccines do. The next type of vaccine that, you know, is pretty prevalent, let's see here, I have it written down, are subunit or recombinant vaccines. These have been around for a while. They're vaccines that use a piece or part of the germ and allows your body to react to that piece or part so that your body isn't being exposed to the whole germ. You can't get an infection, but the next time your body sees that piece or part, which should, if the vaccine is made correctly, should be unique to that germ. So your body forms the antibodies to that little piece, whether that's the glycocalyx of a germ or something like that, like a unique piece of that germ. Your body reacts to it and subdues the infection. Works really well. These tend to need boosters as well, though. The next type of vaccine is called a toxoid vaccine. This is similar, kind of, to the last one we just talked about in that there is not part of the germ that is in the vaccine. Or there's not the germ that's in the vaccine, but it is a byproduct of the germ that is in the vaccine. So a toxin or something that the germ produces is what's in the vaccine, and that's what your body reacts to form the immune response. So the next time that your body is exposed to the germ will have to cause an infection or at least become part of the body, be in the body long enough to start producing that toxin. And once it does, your body can then shut down the infection, which is great. So that one, it does a little bit of a workaround to different germs, so that, you know, it's used for those kinds of germs that you wouldn't want to inject in the body in any way, or ones that can't be stabilized into a vaccine. You know, they wouldn't be able to stay in a vaccine media alive or attenuated. They can't be modified in any way. So this allows for you to still have some immunity to a really bad infection without having to have the actual germ or parts of the germ in the vaccine. And now we're going to talk about kind of some newer types of vaccination. And these types of vaccines are not any less reliable, I don't think, but they are newer, meaning we don't know as much about them. So one of these is the mRNA vaccine, which is one of the vaccines that you can get for COVID. So in the case of an mRNA vaccine, mRNA that it's a basically a machine is the easiest way to say it, that is found in the body and also as part of germs that allows the germ or your body to make proteins. And now proteins are used by the body for everything. They build everything. Certain proteins are unique to your body, and therefore there can be unique proteins to viruses and other germs as well. And scientists have been able to grab parts of mRNA that produce certain proteins that are unique to certain germs, and then they're able to put that into your body. It produces the same proteins as the virus would. And so it's kind of like the toxoid one, in the fact that the next time you get an infection, the virus has to start producing things for you to be able to build up a reaction to it. So it's kind of similar in that way. But by introducing mRNA into the body, we don't quite know what the long-term effects of that are. We've been studying it for a really long time, and there don't seem to be very many side effects. But just like whenever you introduce a new thing, anytime you do science and experiments and things like that, you introduce a new medicine, a new drug, a new vaccine, anything like that, you always have to know that there's going to be some unexpected things that happen. And with this, of course, some of the vaccines did cause certain people to have problems with blood clots and things like that. So even though they've been being researched for a really long time, as far as I understand, COVID-19 is the first time that these vaccines have been produced and used in the general population to help minimize disease. That doesn't make them any less useful, like I said. It just means we know less about them. There is another type of vaccine that was also introduced to help combat COVID. And this one I think only has one type that's out currently. And it is called a vector vaccine. And it uses other similar viruses, kind of like what happened with the smallpox and cowpox thing. It uses similar viruses that are modified to be even closer than they already are to the target germ, and it injects those instead. So whatever they're wanting to try to cure or reduce in the population, they're going to find a germ that is very similar to that. And once they've done that, they're going to modify it a little bit further so that it more closely resembles the germ that they're going for. And once they do that, they're able to inject that modified form into the body as a live attenuated virus, I would assume, although it didn't state on the website that I was looking on. And then the body is able to react to that and be able to recognize the parts that have been modified and be able to react to those in the future, and it provides immunity. This one seems the most, if I'm being 100% honest, this one seems the most unlikely to work to me. Because when I think about it, I get a little bit confused as to why. I know viruses are similar, so they cause similar infections. That I understand. And I also understand that they're modifying it even further so that it's even more similar to the virus that they're going for. But if there was another option, I don't know why you wouldn't take it, because it seems like this one's the most like, meh, it might work. Like, it might provide you the immunity you need. But the body's an amazing thing. I think it can do a lot more than what I'm able to understand. But when I think about it, I just wonder how the body is able to differentiate the part of the virus that it needs to make the antibody that it needs to react to in the future. So how does the body pick up on that piece? And maybe there's a way in the modification that they make it so that the body reacts to that piece and forms that antibody, and if they do, kudos to them. That's beyond my understanding. As far as vaccines moving forward, as far as where are we going in the future, there are some other vaccines that they're working on, but again, we haven't seen in action yet. One of those is a DNA vaccine. And so this one's kind of like the mRNA vaccine that produces proteins, I'm assuming. In which case, they take DNA from the germ, and that DNA, which, is used to build mRNA, and used to build all of the things in the body. I almost got blown up by a creeper. Oh my. Okay. Back to our conversation. Let's see here. So we were talking about the DNA vaccines, which don't exist as far as in practical use right now, but they are something that they're working towards in the future. So again, the way I'm assuming these work is that they take DNA from the actual germ, and that is somehow incorporated into the vaccine, and it is able to produce, by working with cells in the body or something like that, markers that the body isn't able to build antibodies against, and once it has built those antibodies, it can then use those antibodies in the future, and the same way as every other vaccine. So I'm a little foggy on this one, I'll admit, because there wasn't a whole lot of information on the internet about it, because it's not really something that we use currently. So there's a lot of information on the internet from very respectable sources about all the other vaccines that I've talked about. So if you're at all interested in any of them, I highly suggest you look them up yourself, read about them, get familiar with them, and then, if you have any questions, you can always talk to a doctor or a nurse or something like that, somebody like that who deals with them on a daily basis. And if you don't trust a nurse or a doctor, well, it happens. Some people are very wary of medical professionals. Then I suggest you do independent research, but do it on sites that are legitimate. I'm not talking forums. If it's a forum type web page, meaning that there's just a bunch of random people talking, please do not use that as your source. The general population may or may not have the information that you're looking for. They may or may not have valid information. They may be making stuff up. Personal accounts are also not valid forms of information. You may know someone who had a horrible reaction to a vaccine, any type of vaccine, and that person will swear to you up and down that they got a virus from a vaccine or a germ from a vaccine, and it's what caused all the problems. When in truth, that person may have had a vaccine reaction, meaning that it had nothing to do with the germ that was in the vaccine and altogether to do with the ingredients that are in the vaccine. And not saying that that person had any less of a hard time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it wasn't the fact that they got the vaccine, it was the fact that they were allergic or more susceptible to something in the vaccine, and not necessarily the vaccine itself or the germ that was in the vaccine itself. Personal accounts are not science. Personal accounts and stories do not constitute a basis for information. You may trust that person, and I understand that. And they wouldn't lie to you. They're not trying to lie to you. It's just that they are not able to provide good information because they either don't know, so through ignorance, or they've had a bad experience that they don't fully understand, and therefore that is causing them to be a little bit ignorant towards the issue. Or they had a bad experience that they fully understand, but it's not, they're not going to relay it to you correctly, and therefore you're not going to understand why they had that bad problem. And it's not necessarily an individual flaw. I'm 100% sure it's a human flaw to take a bad experience that you've had and try to prevent other people you know from having that same bad experience. So if you had a vaccine reaction, you wouldn't necessarily want your mom to go out and get the vaccine, because for you it was extremely painful and took a long time to, recover from, and those kinds of things. So why would you want someone you love to have that same problem? So you just tell them, don't go get the vaccine. And this applies to everything. This doesn't have to do with vaccinations at all. It could be you went to the dentist, and this dentist, you had a really, really painful tooth root abscess, and they wound up having to do a root canal. They charged you $4,500 to get the root canal fixed. And then something happened and you had to go get another root canal, and you blame that doctor. And now you don't want your family going to see that doctor anymore, or anyone you know to see that doctor anymore. And you write them a bad review on Yelp and all these things. But what if it wasn't that doctor's fault? What if you were going to have that problem no matter where you went? But because you dealt with that person, that doctor, and you had that bad experience with them, chances are you're not going to recommend them or send any of your family there. And the same thing happens with vaccines and other things like that. People either don't fully understand them, or they blame them for things that don't actually happen. Or they have a bad experience with medical professionals as a whole, and that causes them not to want to get a vaccine. Distrust of the medical community is definitely a really big issue when it comes to vaccination or any type of medical treatment, because people who are wary of medical professionals assume that those medical professionals don't have their best interests at heart. And because of that, they're not going to go get the thing. And they convince other people to don't go get the thing. I don't have any problem with people having their own opinion. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not here to convince anybody to go get a vaccine or any type of medical treatment whatsoever, because I'm not a doctor. I don't know your medical history. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about you. So for me to recommend blindly that you go get a vaccine would be highly irresponsible. And I'm not going to do it. So yeah, it's not about, for me, it's not about telling you to go get the vaccine. It's just about informing you on what types of vaccines there are and what they do and don't do for your body. And like I said, there are a lot of things that vaccines don't do, that I think some people assume they do, and then there's a few things that vaccines do that people assume they don't do, which is unfortunate. But that pretty much wraps up that talk for today. I just wanted to, like I said, lay some information at your feet for you to do whatever you want with it. And I did want to give a brief caution about, which sources you can and can't trust as far as the interwebs and friends and family. And like I said, it's not that your friends or family are trying to mislead you. They're probably not. They want, especially if it's your family, I'd hope they have your best interests at stake. But they just may not be fully informed, or they may be carrying a bad experience around with them. And that'll make it very hard for them to provide good, clear information. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I'm going to continue trying to get some books and get some enchantments going. Probably our next episode will be a little bit more entertaining, because I do have some other things planned. I'm just too tired to start a major project right now. So, as far as how I'm doing okay. I finally, like I said, started to feel better. And, I was pretty dang sick. I'm not going to lie. This definitely, I would count this in the top 2 sicknesses for me as an individual of my life. The only other time I've been this sick is when I spent, a little bit of time in the hospital with a stomach virus one time that I'd gotten from eating bad pizza sauce. So it's right up there for the one time that I've been hospitalized. So yeah, take that as you will. I wanted to have this conversation because my dad and I both wound up getting COVID. He wound up getting it from his job, from people at his work, and then he accidentally brought it home to us. And my dad was fully vaccinated when he got COVID. He was fully vaccinated. And I was partially vaccinated, and I was still able to get the virus. And I think a lot of people in my life, when I told them that my dad had COVID and that I had COVID, I feel like a lot of people were shocked that either one of us had gotten COVID. And they were shocked because they thought that because we had both gotten the vaccine, that we weren't going to be able to get it. And I even had several people around me say, "Oh, well, you're vaccinated, you can't get COVID," when I first got sick. And then I had to tell them that my dad was fully vaccinated and he still got sick, and they were shocked. So because I saw, a little bit of discrepancy in knowledge of the people around me, I wanted to make sure that I could discuss this and really talk about it so that, everyone around me has the same information that I have and is the same understanding of the science behind vaccines as I do, so that they're not as confused as to why I got sick. I've told everybody I'm a little bummed that I did get sick. Not gonna lie, because I've been trying to be good. I wear a mask everywhere I go. I try to stay away from large crowds. Blah. But these things happen. Nobody wanted COVID to happen, at least not in my household. And I'm not gonna blame anybody for it. So it's one of those things that, yes, I got sick. Yes, I'm feeling a little bit better and glad for it. And now I've been able to impart a little bit of knowledge, hopefully, onto anyone who watches this video as far as to how vaccines work and that kind of thing. So with that, we're going to call this episode quits, because I'm actually starting to feel like I'm losing my voice. And also we've gotten through most of the information that I wanted to get through today. So, of course, I will see you hopefully next week, and we will be trying to do something a little bit more exciting than just getting some levels and getting some ending books. And then hopefully you guys learned something from this episode. If you have any questions, of course, hit me up in the comments. Okay? Thanks. Bye.